If you think that all flies are all bad, you've got it horribly wrong. You see, you might think that bees have got the pollination market cornered. Haha. Flies can pollinate flowers just as well. Not only blowflies and houseflies, but also the so-called hoverflies. Those creatures you see hovering around your garden flowers all the time.
Flowers love flies because they're hairy. Pollen grains stick to the fly's bristly exterior. Perhaps flies do deserve a medal, because without them we'd be knee-deep in dead bodies.
They break down organic material, anything that once lived, grass clippings, rubbish, old food scraps, into compost. Now gardeners know how important compost is. You chuck it all into a bin, all that stuff of vegetable matter, and it's the maggots, thousands of them, that gobble it up and basically turn it into plant food.
But some maggots like eating us.
If a person has been murdered and there's a body out in the field and it's been laying there for a few days, you can actually tell when the person was murdered by the stage of development of the blowfly larvae on the corpse. There are cases where forensic entomology using blowflies have been used in court cases as evidence and help convict the murderer.
The first recorded case of flies as private detectives comes from 13th century China, when a farmer was brutally murdered with a sickle. All the farmers in the district were called in and asked to lay their sickles on the ground. Flies were attracted to the traces of blood left on one sickle, and the guilty farmer promptly confessed. During the First World War, soldiers were horribly wounded and often left for days in no man's land. By the time they reached the hospital, their wounds were filled with maggots. But to the doctor's amazement, their injuries were healing beautifully. It turned out the maggots were super surgeons.
They act in a very interesting way. I always describe them as miniature carpet shampooers, because they spit out agents which are able to dissolve dead tissue. And these agents sort of dissolve all the muck in the wound, turn it into a liquid soup, which the maggots then suck back up enthusiastically as a source of nutrient.
Today, doctors are finding more and more uses for maggot therapy. They've even discovered that maggots will happily munch on certain kinds of skin cancers. And perhaps the fly can help us in other ways in the future.
The most important application for the results in this lab is in the field of micro-robotics. Imagine an earthquake. Many buildings collapse and there are people trapped inside the rubble. It would be lovely to have small robotic devices the sizes of flies and could crawl or fly through the rubble and find people while they're still alive, beam their coordinates back to rescue workers outside.
Real flies are a masterpiece of engineering. Scientists have a long way to go before we can construct anything that comes close to the miniature maneuverability that makes flies so successful. But perhaps one day we'll develop our own mechanical six-legged masterpiece.